Hi, I'm Neil Sharma, President of Spice Technology Group, and I'm here with Marina Garvilo from HMV Canada, and we're going to talk about the state of EDI B2B integration within the retail industry. We'll talk a little bit about where we've come from over the past few decades in EDI. We'll talk about what's happening today in the world of omni-channel that's giving rise to more and more adoption of EDI. And we will also spend some time talking about what we're seeing as the future of EDI over the next 10 years. So stay tuned. The state of EDI and B2B integration in retail is good. It's been a technology that has been utilized for several decades now in various stages, from early infancy to fairly levels, or from early infancy to levels of maturity that exist today. Except that the industry that it serves is changing quite a bit, and retail has been affected by omni-channel, and omni-channel has become a challenge that integration is meant to solve. So there is a huge use case for EDI and B2B in retail.
As we know, EDI is in business since the late 70s or mid 70s, and it's many people think that it has its heyday back maybe in the mid 90s, and from that point on it started to kind of slow down as new technologies evolve. But we have to admit that there's still a huge demand for EDI. And there is definitely, I agree with Neil here, there's definitely a place for EDI as new technologies evolve. And although there are a few challenges that EDI is facing these days, and one of them is because it's highly structured model that is pretty much static, and it needs some kind of interface that would, convey this data and present data in a new, more visible and transparent way for end customers.
There's been a lot of talk about the API economy, as we call it, which is the applications today that are being developed require real-time feeds of data. And there's been a lot of talk about, with web services being evolved at such high level and being utilized, will EDI still be around? And EDI still has a fairly important purpose that it is serving, because at least within retail, the data structures are semantic, which simply means that organizations that are utilizing data or EDI have very specific use cases for them, and it also defines the business process that they're enabling through EDI. So EDI still will be around. At what levels, it's still to be determined. But it's still its growth in the market today has been still an eye opener, and it's still growing at between 7% and 10% per year. And we're really happy to see many companies still adopting EDI, and especially in their supply chain.
As Neil just mentioned, that EDI will still be growing, and I heard a different number. I heard that even 20%, there is a room for growth up to 20%. And we have to bring up another point here. That is, a lot of companies invested a lot of capital into initial startup of EDI businesses. So it's a legacy that not many companies would want to give up at this point. So we have to find a way to bring new technologies that would utilize the existing EDI system environment and bring it up to the new level. And again, as business environment is changing, and new business models being introduced in the market, like smaller to mid-sized companies are entering the market, and retailers will face this new environment, and we have to adjust our existing EDI business into new realities. For example, before, let's say 20 years ago or something, when we were at the high point with EDI business, only 10% of your your suppliers, for example, give you almost 95 to 97% of all your business, which was pretty easy and made a lot of sense to introduce EDI, because all you need at the time just to bring into your network just 10% of your supplies, and you get all the business you need. These days, retailers are struggling with the new realities, and they try to introduce a more variety of different products. That means more small to mid-size businesses, and all of a sudden they found themselves that they don't have 95 to 97% of automation anymore. So there's a need for new technologies on the top of the existing technologies.
I think it's a great point. Within retail, as we have been talking about the need to increase assortment, and assortment can't be increased by the same 10 suppliers or same 20 suppliers that you've been dealing with. Today, you need, as a retailer, to reach out to hundreds of new suppliers, and you've got to bring their product data into your organization. And as a result, you have to, again, B2B integration is really important. But a lot of those suppliers might be small suppliers. They may be distributors that don't have access to either EDI technology, let alone web services and API and a much more difficult type of technology to implement. And so things such as web EDI remains very relevant in how do you bring a large supplier base on pretty quickly in order to work as a retailer and increase that assortment so that retailers can lead their customers can have a better assortment and sell more product faster. So it certainly remains very, very relevant today. So ultimately, all of the effort around EDI and B2B integration is really to integrate your processes with suppliers and other trading partners, but it's also to generate a lot of data. And once this data gets generated, it provides value to retailers in a variety of different ways. Marina, what are your thoughts about that?
Companies today are still struggling with integrating part of this process. EDI so far has done a great job into bringing data, into exchanging data between entities in the standardized format. However, companies on both ends of the exchange still struggling with integrating this data, interpreting this data and import it into their backend systems, and especially to make it available internally to all models, to all departments of their businesses. So that's a big challenge for the EDI, the integration part. And that's where API technologies can fill in, build a next level of the EDI, built on the top of existing EDI, because EDI basically it's a huge data storage, right? Mm-hmm. So how we use this data storage in a smart way is really important, and that's what companies are looking for right now.
So I think one important direction going with EDI and this massive amount of data that is generated is trying to glean some insight out of it. So there's a lot of thought being given now by retailers who've already implemented EDI and have been running with it for now a decade or 2 decades, are saying, well, instead of just having that data come in and go away and sit on our servers, let's actually start to utilize it to see how we can increase competitive advantage in our marketplace by analyzing supply chain data. Can we, for example, predict a stockout at one point in time? Could we, for example, predict where we might have transportation bottlenecks in a global supply chain? Because we have all this data coming in through our supply network, but we have external data coming in that adds to this particular data and then collectively gives you a lot more analytical capability than you ever had before.
It brings us a point of how to close this loop. And probably the best way is to collaborate the efforts of the retailer with their suppliers and bring this collective effort of how to use this data to close the business cycle. And that's another point where companies are struggling right now. Of course, it's not a novice idea. It's been around for probably over a decade. And but a good example was the vendor managed inventory, which never really took off in earnest at many companies. And for various reasons, and one of them was, of course, the trust and not knowing where to start to collaborate on every level, on the computer level, on the business level, and yeah.
Yeah, and vendor managed inventory led to scan-based trading, and scan-based trading was also one, basically VMI on steroids, as we would call it, and that took off quite a bit. But everything has now been overshadowed by e-commerce and omni-channel, which really, e-commerce is yet another sales channel. But omni-channel is a collection of all of these sales channels, and how do you make that work in one environment for one retailer without caring, how the product is sold or where it is sold and what are the underlying technologies? So we'll see a reinvention of VMI and scan-based trading and e-commerce all come back together under the term of omni-channel. And again, EDI from a back-end supplier integration perspective, transportation integration, manufacturing integration becomes really important in actually executing many of these strategies. So Marina, given that EDI still has a lot of legs and a lot of room to grow, where would you think a retailer who's implemented EDI, what else could they be doing?
A huge area still present a challenge in the current EDI business is probably the lack of education of what EDI is, what is EDI is capable of, and what can particular organization can do with the EDI processes. Giving an example that most of the companies in retail business especially, they're pretty good understanding of what the EDI is on the technical level, but not a very good understanding on the business level of what advantages we can bring in with the EDI. So it basically, when EDI rushed into the market 20 years, 25 years ago, and everybody was excited and implementing it, there was clear vision of what it can achieve, and it was technical vision. But once it's all done and implemented, that's kind of where it stops. And now it's what's the word? Like we're stalling
We're
stalling in the environment where all technically been implemented. But what's the next step? And next step, actually, do not start with the IT department, because the IT department is service department. It starts with the business. So there is a huge need to educate the business on all levels, to mid-management, to the senior management, of what should be done and can be done. I guess the companies like EDI bureaus, EDI providers, I think there is a room for presenting, educating the upper management and giving them a clear vision of what can be done for their specific organization. Maybe we can create videos, we can create some materials, maybe workshops or some conferences specifically targeting this area. So these people, when they have these tools and understanding what EDI is, they can bring this solution into their companies. So it would be coming from the up, down, to where IT is already understanding this mission. So they already have these tools. They just need this encouragement, this go ahead to implement the solutions.
Indeed. So the question really is, in that area, I would interpret it also by saying that, does business drive technology or does technology drive business? It's an age-old question. I think it's a little bit of both, but it is also incumbent upon, as I think what you're saying, is upon IT personnel to present to business saying, here's what's possible. The conversation of here's what's possible with technology and data is a really important conversation to be had. Within IT departments, we can't just be waiting to be told, here's the mandate and here's what we need to get done. Technology is changing incredibly, and EDI is changing incredibly as well, as we already talked about it, and its use cases are changing. And so education is a must. Simple education in terms of, what is the value of having your purchase order acknowledged in time by your supplier when the demand for products fluctuates very quickly and vastly over very short periods of time? How important? What is the value? And can the IT individual interpret that, or help a business leader interpret that in terms of here's why this is really important in today's market, and EDI therefore makes something like that happen. So yes, I totally agree with you. So in conclusion, I think it's important for us to point out that in the Western world as we know it today, that is competing very heavily in a global climate within retail. A retailer today can come in from any part of the world and sell into any part of the world. In the Western world, very particularly, we have a lot of legacy technology that has been running for decades. And we need to get more horsepower out of this legacy technology. And very specifically in the retail world, we need to be able to reach out into the supplier community and our trading partner community and build competitive advantage through data. And EDI is one of those unspoken and underspoken technologies that really gives somebody a lot more horsepower in managing inventory and pleasing the customer. And so we think that a lot more adoption of that is going to take place, and certainly some education is required in that area. And I would urge people to go read our white paper, which is Building a Case for EDI in Retail, further, which is available to download from our website. I wanted to thank everyone for being part of this video, and we hope to see you again